Tom statistical info. The Huntsville I grew up in, I remember very well, was about 15 to 20,000 people. And as we were saying and alluding to, most of us did know one another. We knew people in the country, people, black people. But I do have to say, in growing up, the segregated aspect of the society, we didn't feel it as it's impacted today, in light of the black community was fairly close-knit. You had families of people who all worked hard. The street I grew up on, Sprague Street, everybody, various categories of people. You had your teachers, you had, you can help me with this too. I can't seem to get anybody who remembers Mr. Kilmer. Remember him, the funeral home person?
Yeah.
I talked to some of my friends, and they'll say, I don't remember him, but they were down the street from us. Teachers, Charles Brandon, Mrs. Virginia Moore, our librarian, she was across the street, William Smith, Roselle next door. So it was like, with that category of people. On the other hand, my grandmother worked downtown for a family of rich white people. Lady next door worked at the Russell Erskine Hotel on one side of me. So you had a conglomeration of people, and the connection that we all felt was a good thing. Walking to the store was no big deal. You felt safe, you felt protected, people looked out for one another. But there still was the segregated thing. My older brother, who by the way now lives in the Russell Erskine Hotel after having been displaced by the council court and all that kind of thing. There was a time the only thing you did down there was you might be a baby, the lady next door to me did do that there. My mother would play for the New Year's Eve party there and make enough money for my tuition or January, all that kind of stuff. But I remember those kinds of things. I remember my older brother would walk to school. He didn't walk with the rest of us. He walked with this white guy who they get to a certain point. This guy goes this way to Huntsville Middle. He went this way to Council High. It was just like that. Nobody really thought a lot about it. We were talking about that the other day. But I do recall things like going down Church Street. Michael made reference to speaking out news. And I guess one reason why I love my home folks so much, we are the only ones who can have some of these discussions, because I can remember, very few people remember there was a newspaper before Speaking Out News. And I remember Mr. L.C. Jamal was so gracious as to give me an opportunity to work at his Huntsville Mirror, which was a newspaper, and typing and doing things like that. And I got into things like even selling ads. I thought about what you said about the ad situation. And it was flourishing. Income tax time, I was sharing with my husband the other day, we went to get our income tax, and these folks want some more money, and I just
A little bit louder here, I can hear you.
can't hear me. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so soft. But anyway, I remember Mr. Jamal was, they call him Professor Jamal, and many of you probably would know his name. I'm sure all of you all remember. But anyway, he, at income tax time, he filled out people's income tax forms, and he taught me how to do it. And I can remember I was probably second year college, something like that. And I would go down there about 5 in the afternoon, and I'd be there till 1 or 2 in the morning. And I can remember so well, at the end of the evening, I made $40. And that was a lot of money, you know. And but I say that to say, that speaks to the entrepreneurial aspect. And I know I don't need to belabor the point too much because other people have something to say. But the entrepreneurial aspect of that, and I just heard recently one of some Sister Trump young man passed, and it took me right back to the days of the Sister Trump barbecue place. One of my dearest friends, Barbara Hereford at the time, her dad was a pastor down at St. John, St. John. She worked there, And I can remember those visits. I could go all up and down that street because I worked at Caples and as a night dispatcher when I was in college. And in retrospect, it was truly that in the black community, all of us lifting one another up. And I look back on even things like that. The gentleman at the Caples, and most of them, a lot of them passed now, the ones that I worked with, but they knew I was a little old girl in college trying to get through the day, so they made sure at the end of the week they paid me. And, you know, that was a pretty good deal. Go down to Mr. Jamal's with my dear friend James Friend, I know y'all remember him. He'd fold the papers, I would type the stuff, and then I'd help him fold papers. I hated getting that black ink on my fingers. And it was later, it was a long time before I realized that the thing about selling the black newspaper is your advertisements. And that's how it was done. But the lifting one another up, I truly felt that in this community growing up, because opportunities, all those people, and I can go down to Sweet Shop and all the other places where young people were given opportunities to work. And when we go out a lot now in restaurants, and the young persons who might work with us as a waiter or whatever, I'll use as, are you a student? Generally, they're either Oakwood, A&M, or UH, and it's just so nice to give them a little extra tip. And but see, back then, you had your black businesses, even though if you think about a small city like that, you think to yourself, how did they sustain all that? But people worked, and people were comfortable sharing with one another. I think about so much of that, but my problem as an old seasoned citizen now, you really don't have anybody to discuss these things because Huntsvillians are so few and far between, and people who come from other places, I think to a large extent, they probably have a hard time believing some of this. So I just try not to have these discussions. And if you saw me give this young lady right here, Becky, when she came in, her mother came to Huntsville working at the, well, I graduated from A&M in '65. Affirmative action had just got on the table, so to speak. So if you graduated from college and could speak a little bit like you had a little sense, you were probably going to be given a chance. And so many of my A&M friends ended up with careers there. But I do recall Leroy Daniels. Some of you, I'm sure, know Leroy. I consider him among my dearest friends. Leroy and I graduated together. We started working together at the Arsenal in civilian personnel. We were, what did they call it, personnel staff and specialist trainees, GS5. That was big stuff then. And the deal was we were going to be moved on up in the world. Leroy and I tease each other now. He says, see, Carolyn, when I told him I wanted to quit to teach, do any of you remember the name Addison Fields? Mm-hmm. You all do. Maybe not. Anyway, Addison Fields was in charge of hiring black teachers for the county. And I can recall working at the Arsenal for a little while, and to me it was the most boring job in the world. You know, going through all of those packages and this and that. So I remember telling him, I said, I really want to teach. He said, Carol, you don't want to do that. So they're going to pay you all that money, and you just imagine this. I said, no, that's what I want to do. Because I was married to a nice fellow who said, whatever you want to do is fine, you know. Because I was young, energetic, because I graduated at 20, which means in essence, I was kind of, you know, excited about life and all that stuff. Didn't have a baby yet, so, you know, that makes a difference too. But anyway, so I quit to teach, went to Tony Junior High, taught there a year and a half, had a baby. So after, when school was out for the summer, I remember James Blackwell, he said, well, Carolyn, come back for the summer. Maybe we let you do something different. You might like it a little better. I didn't have anything else to do. Money would have been good for the summer, so back then, teachers didn't get paid for summer. Anyway, so I went there and started working with a project called Youth Opportunity Campaign. And that job hired young people to do whatever out at the arsenal. And I think it was about that time that I met Mrs. Hughes. She comes along telling Leo and me what to do. And that was a good thing because she was such a dear to me. I'm dating you, Becky was a little 13-year-old. They used to say, nobody,
66, yeah.
they used to say, the people in the office said, well, you know, Miss Hughes doesn't let anybody go to lunch with her but you. And she really took me under her wing and this and that. And the next thing you know, we were very, very near. But I ended up, after my daughter was born, I went on back to teach. And by then, integration was fixing to get crazy around here. Because you see, these people, we didn't say, no, we don't know about all that. And Mr. Principal at Sparkman said, this thing is coming. So we're going to see what we can do. Dear high school teacher, man, who looked almost like a white lady, had been hired at Sparkman to teach. So the principal said he wanted to hire somebody that it wasn't no question about whether they were black or not, and that was me to teach history. At the same time, George Wallace was standing in the schoolhouse door and all this foolishness, and I go into all that. Had a good time. And to this day, some of the students will say things like, they'll ask their friends things like, is Miss Parker still radical? And I like to say, I'm more radical than I ever was, because I learned more than I knew then. And in retrospect, on a spiritual note, not Michael, on a spiritual note, it had to be about God, because as radical as I was, I managed to keep a job for 38 years, but moving around all over the place. But Huntsville, the growth that I see in Huntsville, and I know that's not going to let you have your say, I'm okay with the growth, because the 20,000 folks that I grew up with, and I still love my home folks. There's nothing nicer than my class of 61 and us, when we all get together and do lunch or whatever. We keep up with one another. But the growth is good, I think, for our city. I like the idea of a lot of that, but I also know, and I kind of had some second thoughts myself about a lot of these kinds of things that will be sacrificed in the name of growth. But back to Mrs. Hughes, I have to give her a shout out in her absence. May she rest in peace. My dear pastor likes to say so-and-so's in heaven, and happy she is in heaven. Sometimes I'll say, well, that's how he's supposed to say that, because you know, I hadn't quite gotten to that with some of this stuff. But anyway, that's another whole thing. But she really put her everything on the line. And I can honestly tell you, anybody along my age group and maybe 20 years younger, if they went to Richardson Arsenal, they came through her. And I can see her right now walking in these offices, pressing for someone to get a job. And it takes courage to do that. The racism, and I'm just not on a negative note, but I will say this about my dear hometown of Huntsville, Alabama. One of my former students from Sparkman, a white lady, not young, she was 2 years younger than me. She's president of the bank now. She was insisting on taking me to lunch, and we did all that. I found they fit in my schedule. And her thing in terms of talking about it was, you know, that she had a different perspective. But I did say to her, I said, the Huntsville I grew up in, we knew our place, so to speak. But there is still this thing today. I like to say Huntsville is still run by Franklin Street. Now, people will take issue with, well, it's not like that. I guess that's why the Lord sent me a radical husband. Because I can talk all this stuff. He's from Newark, New Jersey, where he saw a lot of this. But Huntsville is, in my way of thinking, still being run by that old bunch of cronies. And Michael might be a little more radical than I am, but I am radical. But I have also had some thoughts to myself. I'm not as quick to verbalize my personal thinking a lot, but there is something to be said for each one of us, and I'm gonna end on this. There's something to be said for each one of us to be cognizant and mindful of what is. There is a side that says, how do you manage all that? Because you see, it's not going away. Those folks are going to maintain control of this city, and there's probably nothing we can do about it. Call the mayor, your name gets put on a list of rabble rousers, the next thing you know, you have a fender bender, you're going to jail instead of the cops saying going about your way, you know. Because you see, there is something to be said for the fact that so many people in leadership positions, and I do have to say I have white friends and black friends, and I manage to traverse this okay, but there are some things you will hear if you listen, you don't have to comment. And you know, some people are not doing what they tell us they are doing. And that's all, I'm gonna stop on that. It's really good to do this because we have these people we sit around and talk with sometimes, and invariably this is what I always get. But Carolyn's not like that anymore. And that's when I have to put a period at the end of the sentence and talk about the pretty bluebird I saw on my porch this morning. So I'll end on that note.
All right, thank you. It was in downtown Huntsville that we as Negroes could experience many of the amenities that the white society had denied us for many years. My first school was kindergarten at Phillips Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Has already been mentioned, there just south of the depot. My first knowledge of an indoor baptismal pool was at First Missionary Baptist Church in the basement. Because I grew up in a rural church. We went to the creek. I was baptized in the creek. My first experience in a library was in the Dulcina DeBerry Library on the second floor of the Church Street Community Center. And I loved that place. I absolutely loved it. It was a life-changing experience for me. My parents both loved to read, and they had sort of instilled that in me. But it's that library that cultivated a love for reading, because I could sit there and travel to countries around the world from the pages of a book. And I got that in a black library. Reverend H.P. Snodgrass was the part-time librarian there. So I read and I got some spiritual food while I was there. Downstairs in that library was where my Girl Scout troop met, and where I experienced many summer recreation activities. Ms. Brandon. My first vacation Bible school was at the St. John African Methodist Episcopal Church when Reverend Fox was pastoring there. It was before Reverend Hampton. Again, I grew up in a rural church. We didn't have any vacation Bible school. Church was closed up all during the week, and especially during the day. My first memory of a cleaners was Masking Cleaners on Church Street and Reese Cleaners on Home Street. Both of them were black owned. My father used to take his hats to have them blocked at Maston's Cleaners. He said Reverend Maston was the best in town in blocking a hat. My first experience of sitting down in a restaurant in the 1950s was at the Sugar Bowl and the Sweet Shop, and later over at Sistrum. My first movie theater I ever attended, and the only one I attended until I was out of high school, was the Princess Theater. It was a wonderful Saturday experience. We could take 50 cents and go to the movie and have a hot dog and have a Coke and see the movie 10 times if you wanted to. It was the best deal in town. My first trip to a dentist was to Dr. H.C. Finn upstairs over the Sweet Shop. And there was other stuff up there too. Carolyn and I were talking and we were coming in, she was saying there was some stuff that she didn't want to mention. There were other things up on the sweet shop. There was a dance hall up there, but I wasn't supposed to know about that. My first knowledge of a black-owned newspaper was the Huntsville Mirror, operated by Professor L.C. Jamal. My first real job was at Welch and Harris Funeral Home, operated by Mr. R.E. Nelms, who was also a deacon at First Missionary Baptist and a friend of my parents. It was this establishment that led me to eventually decide to go to mortuary school and become licensed as a funeral director and an embalmer. Though I don't do it now, I'm still licensed. And before my time, Royal Undertaking was downtown there on Home Street. And when I remember Royal, they were on Oak Avenue. It was in downtown Huntsville where I met black professionals. See, my parents weren't professionals. My daddy worked at Redstone Arsenal. He was on the wage board grade. He was not a professional. He was a chauffeur. My mother did domestic work, and she and Miss Janie Turner on Spraggin Street did sewing together. They did alterations of the Donovans and several other stores. So it was downtown Huntsville where I met black professionals, black attorneys, Attorney Charles Henley, black doctors, Dr. Benford, Dr. Pierre, dentists, Dr. John Cashin Sr., Dr. John Cashin Jr., Dr. Harold Drake, Dr. James Bell. All of that inspired me in life because here were people, black people, who were professionals, who had gone to college and professional schools and were working in their fields. But I believe the entire black community in downtown was strengthened by those churches that Tommie mentioned, because they significantly impacted the life of people. I don't care what people say. For African Americans, the church is the hub of our life. The civil rights movement was born out of the church. I remember going to mass meetings at First Baptist with my mother in the very early 60s, 1960, 1961, when people like Martin Luther King and Dr. Mordecai Wyatt Johnson, who was president of Howard University, would come here to speak. And my mother would get a cab, because my father worked a lot at night then, and she'd get a cab, and we'd go to those mass meetings. And people would they would fill the sanctuary, and people would be on those high steps. And some of you have been around a long time, but remember when the steps of First Baptist just went straight up. It was a long thing, and then later on they made the turns in it so that you had some landings. But people would be standing all on the steps, all out on the street, because the church played such a significant role in us as African Americans trying to seek some equity in life. Tommie also mentioned of the St. Bartlett Primitive Baptist Church, which, though it wasn't technically right in this Holmes Street area and Church Street area, it was just, as I like to put it as profiles, it was just south of downtown on the other side of the big spring on Oak Avenue, just a short walk. It's interesting to me that all of these black churches were birthed and born, all of them except two came after the Emancipation Proclamation. One came before this, but it's interesting that they were birthed in that neighborhood. 1865, 1880, 1885, during Reconstruction. Significant role that the churches have played. Walking through the Home Street, Church Street, Jefferson Street area, I appreciate all of the different businesses that are mentioned. And let me also say that one of the significant churches was the Lakeside, the United Methodist Church over on Jefferson Street, whose back was to the Cumberland Church, like approximately that. And it's in Lakeside, in their basement, that William Hooper Council High School was started. So my alma mater, our alma mater, all of us are graduates of William Hooper Council. It was started at Lakeside, and they hold a special place in my heart because of that. So all of these things, up and down the street, service stations, a professional place, even a black-owned hotel, Patton's Place, owned by Sam Patton, up in front of the depot. And first time I went to a beauty shop, you know, for black girls, how you got your hair done is your mother on Saturday morning washed it and got that straightening comb out and burned your ears. That was the experience of little black girls. That's what happened. But one day my mother took me to Mary Hurt, who was on the first floor of Patton's Place Hotel, and she did my hair, and I just thought I'd gone to heaven. But all of these professionals surrounded us, and I do like to step back in time, and I appreciate Michael for what he said, but I appreciate stepping back in time and remembering how things were. And of course, I live now where Council Court once was. I live in the senior building in Gateway Place. I grew up on 10th Calvary Hill. I still own a house there. But I have some health issues, and my house was old. It was old when my daddy bought it in 1943. So it was just going to require a lot more than I wanted to do. I moved out of it. I went from a house where I didn't know anything to a place where I pay rent because the Lord has provided. Now I'm letting a neighbor live in my house rent-free with the deal that he fixes everything. Yeah, I mean, anything goes wrong. I mean, either you fix it or you can move. I mean, it's real simple. If the air goes out, you fix it. If the roof has a problem, you fix it. And when he no longer wants to live there, I'm going to let the fire department do a controlled burn. Because I'm not going to be a slum landlord. I'm not going to let homeless people and raccoons and everybody set up residence in that house. I'm going to have it burned down and I hold to the land. It's 3 lots. So they are very narrow. And what Michael was talking about, I guess over on Townsend Street, they wouldn't let you build a house on the lots. I understand that because those lots on Calvary Street are narrow. They're 40 feet wide, 144 feet deep. And they don't let you build a house now on a lot only 40 feet wide unless it's already in an established neighborhood where there are other houses like that. So I couldn't build a house there, and I'd be afraid to live there if I did live because of the kinds of things that go on. So when we take the moment to remember, we can remember things like church, homes, Jefferson Street, Oak Avenue, where black life flourished. And if you want to be honest, we knew we were living with segregation, but we were proud to be black. When you went downtown and, if you had to go to the bathroom, you had to go to the courthouse, and the colored restrooms were in the basement, and water stood at the bottom of the steps year-round. So we would go to town, and then, my mother had me trained. We got to tell her way ahead of time if you're going to have to go to the bathroom, because we had to make a brisk walk down to Church Street and Home Street to some of those businesses where you could go to the bathroom, where you could get something to eat, where you could drink out of a water fountain that didn't have stuff encrusted all around it. But overall, those areas reminded us that we were with our people. And it was a wonderful time for me. It was a wonderful time to be among other African Americans in the little town of Huntsville, Alabama, and to feel the love and concern. And that's it. That's it. I want to say this. I brought these. My father actually had the green books. He used to get them. I ordered these off Amazon because ours had been missing for years. So I ordered the one of the year I was born, 1947. It doesn't show any businesses in Huntsville. But the one from 1961 to 1964 does list a few things in Huntsville. Of course, it lists Gladys and Jane Motel. That was on Posey Avenue, over there off Pulaski. It lists a tourist home on Oak Avenue run by Mrs. India Herndon, who I believe was Evangeline Spillman's mother. There was another tourist home on Low Street run by the venerable Miss Rosie B. Allen. And of course, there was the Patton service station on North Church Street. But my father owned one of these, and it was tattered. It was, it was just a little raggedy green book. When we would go somewhere, he would sit down and look at it beforehand. If we were driving in New Jersey, in those days, we were going to have to spend the night. Because going those 2-lane highways all the way, we probably were going to have to spend the night. He used the green book to figure out where we could stay. And now there's been a movie made called The Green Book, and this is what it comes from. It was a traveler's guide for Negroes, telling you where you could buy gas, where you could stay, where you could eat, and black families who traveled back in the 40s and 50s, especially, always had one of these. So I just ordered these.
They were pointing to it, but that's at the corner of Holmes and Jefferson, looking west.
Yeah, I remember Powell.
That was Home Street.
That's the home where, on what end?
That's home. If you, right here is the old post office, which is now the federal building. Yeah, and this is coming west on Home Street. That's where, when I was early on, there was a lot of white-owned businesses, but then blacks gradually begin to take over that kind of thing. Educate clubs and all that kind of stuff. The Organist Park was at the end of Church Street, ran into a dead end, and I think Oak Avenue behind it. Church Street was a dead end, and Organist Park, and then this was a service station at the end of some white-owned service stations.
Is that where you could get those big old ice cream cones?
Yeah, but we couldn't get
I
it.
know.
Yeah.
We would all knock a little ice cream cone on.
So this was the south end of Church Street. This is where it came to a dead end. This end was Home Street. And, that's Blue Front Cafe.
Yeah.
But that was on Home Street between Jefferson Street and Church Street.
Was the Blue Friday?
Like that Sarah.
Yeah. That's Fitz Griffin.
Hey,
Sarah
you
Johnson,
remember?
I don't.
I don't remember no Sarah somebody's cafe.
And this is also on Home Street. This is where Royal Funeral Home started.
Yeah.
Royal Undertaking Company.
Okay.
But that was also on Home Street, that same block. That's what I was saying initially. It was amazing to me how all those different businesses would be in that short of distance. Yep.
As the mighty
Princess Theater.
I wonder what it is.
Yeah.
And this was First Missionary Baptist Church, and this was the Reverend Snodgrass was the pastor, and this was the chorus. We had a choir and a chorus.
Oh, okay.
And this was the
Now,
chorus.
this lady with the gray hair on. I don't know his face.
That's not Miss Georgia.
It might be.
I think it may be Miss Georgia Fields,
I believe it
who was
is.
Perry
Yeah,
Ward's
right.
aunt, Ray.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, and I know on the right, on the front here, that's Helen Mason.
Right, this is Mr. Newell, and I think
Yeah.
he put the principal,
Yeah.
And Percy Powell,
that person.
Yeah.
back there next to
And
him.
this is,
Is that Miss Hayes?
this is,
Yeah. Moore.
Yeah, Ms. Moore,
Yeah,
Gladys and
Gladys
James
and James.
Hotel.
Yeah.
Gladys and James
Yeah.
Hotel.
Yeah, that's Miss St. Bowers in front of her.
Okay.
In front of her.
Right.
The woman on the right there.
This is Josie Humphrey.
Oh, yeah, that's she.
Who is that?
Josie Humphrey.
Okay, I know that face.
She had a daughter, Lillian, who retired as a nurse from Huntsville Hospital, and the baby girl, Jean Lynch, who was in our choir, she just died out a year ago.
Was it Lloyd too?
Hmm.
Lloyd, you said Humphreys, is that also?
No.
No, I don't think so.
This is Spring and Valley Barbershop. This came out, I think, in the 60s. Spring and Valley Barbershop, and this was attached to your church.
That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah,
knew
to
it.
Church Street Company Presbyterian, this was an attachment.
And above was a beauty shop, right?
Right,
Yeah.
you shop there, about Spring and Valley Barbershop. This is the first time I was able to get someone to cut my hair other than my dad.
That was a big deal.
Which was great.
Yeah.
But like I said, this was around in the 60s.
Yeah.
Came in the 60s. Yeah, parking meters, this must have been downtown because we didn't have a parking meters on Church Street and homes.
Yeah.
This is Church Street.
Uh-huh, Church Street.
This is Church Street from the Presbyterian Church. You don't remember Snowback?
Sometimes, Carolyn. I don't remember.
I know.
And this is Master Cleaners, this is Texaco Service Station, this is with my uncle Porter Batts, Huntley Batts.
That was a Texaco station?
Texaco Service Station, and right next to it was Webster Harris Funeral Home, and then there was a fish market down here, and barber shop, and ironically, there were also houses that
Yeah.
people lived.
That's
They
right.
lived down, you'd step down and.
What do you mean, a house somewhere there?
And down in here, there
Yeah.
were, people lived down in here.
Yeah, with a shotgun like
Yeah,
ours.
with shotgun like houses, and they'd come up, they'd step up and come up and talk to people that's passing by. And even behind the service station, there were houses, because my mama's sister lived in one of the houses behind the service station. So it was that was, like I said, there was no zoning restrictions. but
That was a
because
mixed
people-
use
Yeah.
community.
That's right.
That's
right.
definitely big.
Before
People
People
went everywhere.
And just like these houses he was talking about on this end of the street, you had to step down to get to it. When you cross Arm Street there at Dr. Drake's office,
Yeah.
Right.
those little houses, they open their front door, walk smack out on the sidewalk.
Oh,
There was no yard.
No setback.
No setback.
Down at the end, you had, I think that was the sweet
Sweet
shop.
shop.
And then,
Okay.
and like I mentioned upstairs, it was the club.
Yeah.
And then there was like Dr. Fearon's office and print shop and all this kind of different professional offices with top.
Yeah, and of course, across the street there where you can't see, was the Lowry home, just down on the Princess Theater, Joe Lowry's house.
That's the edge of the Princess Theater right
Yeah,
there.
I used to leave the theater, and his mother would be sitting on the
And
porch.
sit on the porch with her.
And you go over there and sit on the porch, it was Miss Lowry, yeah.
And that's just another view. This is the,
Yeah, that's looking at
a
St.
northern
John.
view.
Yeah.
You can.
So that church is St. John.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's St. John.
St. John, but you can see the Webster Harris Funeral Home right there. We did have, we did, and we did have parking meters.
I do not
I don't remember parking meters,
Okay.
but, yeah, you can see the service station with house behind the service station, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then that's the, southward view, that, in the same area, and you can see the sweet shop and other facilities close to another beautiful service station.
Where was the community center? Was it near it was near the gas station?
It was down by St.
St.
John.
John.
It was down by St. John, right across from First Baptist,
Okay.
right at the corner.
Right.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, right where St. John's is
On the
now.
Church and Arms.
Right,
Right.
right, exactly.
And then that's places, that's a 1926 photo. Laces Grocery Store. And,
There's the Huntsville
yeah,
Mirror.
there's the Huntsville Mirror.
Alan Ladd, boy, and dog.
Yes.
See that.
Oh, we saw it, we did, they saw it, what it was.
My first one was Good Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's going north, and you can see, and like say, right down.
There's a
the
Sugar
middle.
Bowl, right?
Yeah.
There's a-
Yeah.
Now where's Sugar Bowl? Put your hand on Sugar Bowl.
But we just passed the theater.
Yeah, but see, right here. And like I said, 2 or 3 doors down, Sistrons later on. But that was also, that's where the Lyra House was on that side, just before you get
My
to
church.
your church. Right.
Whoa.
And that was, yeah, this Charles Brandon.
Oh,
No, this is Charles Brandon. Charles Brandon was an educator, and then he ended up working for Joni Electric, and his children are still
Yeah,
around.
right across the street.
and
One of
he
his
was-
children was Miss A&M.
Yeah,
Right.
Jackie, she's president of the House of
Yeah.
Water.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Miss Grace Cashin was his, yes, and.
And
because I
Ms.
think it-
Moore,
Yeah.
She was out loud forever.
yeah, Ms. Moore was, what's it?
You know, they over on
Was that his mother?
Yeah, that was his
Yeah,
mother.
yeah, Ms. Moore
Because
was
all
taught,
of them did.
taught
Okay.
English
Yeah.
at Council House, his mother.
Yeah.
Yep, that's,
Yeah,
I don't know who
them.
he was, but this is the Lowry House.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the Lowry, but Joseph Lowry did. Lowry House.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay, questions, answers. Any questions?
I gotta say something, I cannot resist saying this. It's about you. When they built Calvary Hill, and my older brother, who I told you now lives in Russell, so nothing wrong with him, he just over there enjoying life. But anyway, I remember he wanted to go to Calvary Hill instead of Council High. And I remember he came home one day, I told there was some stories about that. He came home one day, he said, Carolyn, guess what? I met this girl, she's the prettiest girl I ever saw in my life, and her name is Earla Sue. So that's kind of how I met Earla Sue. Yeah. I'm talking about hate. Yeah, yeah. The prettiest girl I ever saw in my life. Right. Thanks. Earla Sue.
Okay, I just wanted to comment that one of the things that we talk about in city planning, and all this is so absolutely, planning is a phenomenal planning, is that even though the Black community, we didn't have a lot of resources, what we had was social capital, that the people, then there's this term that we use in planning, we talk about social planning, collective efficacy, which meant that we had shared values. Because I think everybody here remembers that their grandma or mom said, you are one.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
You gotta act right.
You gotta do that. And so there was a sense of expectations, and when I look back at communities now of color, that collective efficacy, where if I did something down the street, my grandma knew it. And if the lady told me to stop, I knew I had to stop. So I think that in this time, we've lost those two pieces. That I don't care how many bricks and mortar and how much you pave streets and how many trees you plant, until we give people, particularly people of color, Black, to that sense of collective efficacy where we look after each other, and also the social capital that we are our own best resources. And that's what we had to have. Black people had to be their resources. We bought it from each other, because I remember my grandma bought sugar from the lady next door.
Yeah.
So all of those things that made us get to where we are now, because we didn't get to where we are now if we had had the habits of too many of us today. And I'm not trying to label people, but the reason why we were able to aspire was because we had that collective efficacy, and we all valued each other, and we were platforms for each other. I was telling someone that when I go home, it's like, and most of the people have died who are my younger, who are my older people there, but my success was their success. And so every time somebody young from that community did something, the whole community felt proud, because they just say they put their thumbprint somewhere on it. we can't afford to assimilate too much into how other people do things, and that's why we're losing ground. There are some old things that we need to transfer, and it's not old fashioned, and those are things to sustain us. And when I hear you all's stories, that reaffirms that somehow some models and some teachings and some training has to go back and say, how did we make it where we are now? And I love brick houses and all that now. But we leave behind a whole bunch of folk who we need to kind of say, we did that because we had these things in place within the community. It wasn't external so much as it was internal. And so that to me was why, I wanted to hear the stories.
And could it be that when we drive by now and see the schools, the new schools who've been built in Huntsville, and they're magnificent edifices,
Yes.
but the products they're producing is nothing like came out of William Hooper Council High School and Council Training and all of those schools are where, sometimes holes in the window. And I used to tell people, there were certain things at Council High. If you have a leather coat, you better not put it in your locker. You better wear it all day. Cause somebody would find a way to do that combination, and they get that coat. So you get a little jacket for Christmas. You better keep it on all day.
One of the things that really inspired me when I was attending Council High School is my class was the class that marched, not for integration. We didn't march for integration. We weren't interested in integrating the students. And I was on that planning committee, and I would meet at Dr. Cashin's home, and Mrs. Turner recommended me, Mrs. Turner, my English teacher, recommended me to be on this committee. And we met and we strategized how we were going to march on the school board for a better school.
Not to go
Not to integrate them. That's the thing that really got mixed up. And I remember so vividly going to the meetings, and I just felt it all because we're talking about Dr. Cashin's house, this kind of thing and all. And we did all this stuff. And we're going to get a better school, and we marched. And I remember the day we marched, and they had already started integrating because some of my classmates were in the window at Huntsville High School. We marched past that going to the school. But when we got over there, we talked about it because bad windows, leakage, and all this kind of thing. Then they told us they were going to integrate the school.
That's not what we want.
That's not what we wanted. And I tell people to this day that was, that's one of the worst things that it was.
To be honest,
People argue with you about whether or not to
That was one of the worst things that,
I
oh God.
think that was one of the most
We
devastating
really
things.
lost something.
I couldn't
Isn't
live
that
with separate but equal.
The
I couldn't
interesting,
live with separate but equal
Absolutely.
if they had been equal.
yeah. Okay, let's give them thank you so much for coming. And we know that we will sit around and talk about this. And I'm not a Humphillian. I'm Connecticut Humphillian. I'm not that. I have some people who tell me that often, that you're not Humphillian.
Been here so long.
But I believe that what you are feeling, you're talking about here, in my little town back in Democracy, we didn't quite do it that way, but I'll tell you about how we did it there later. But the idea is that when you thought you were getting a better school, that's the interesting part. It was never your intent that I will learn more if I'm sitting next to someone of another color. It was just, I need the books. I don't need to see Johnny Mae's name in there with a line through it. I want my new book like everybody else. But this has been wonderful. We've covered, we've gone all over the board. We've been everywhere. But I think when we come back to it, you said it very well in the end here, that those roots are deep and your community helped to raise you and to get you where you are. I often, I taught here in Alabama A&M for 100 years. And I would often say to the students, now students this first semester, I love when I get those freshman students, you're going back home and you're going to have to stand up in church, so no splitting verbs. And you're going to have to tell them what a good time and what you're learning at Alabama A&M. And they are going to, as my niece would say, they're going to clap for you anyway. But they are also going to take up a little collection And I want you to be the person who looks like you ought to get that because you're on your way somewhere. So I give that sermon to them and they come, and this way now you gotta come back and tell us what happened when you went to church. And then I have them come back with a list of names.
What people that.
No, listen to this one. Of children who wanted to come now because they've been back telling what a good time and how much they were learning. So we have learned a lot from you about the deep roots. When I came here, I only went downtown when the bus went, the big red maroon bus went down there. And then they would give us how many minutes, how many hours we would be there. So I didn't get to see all these things. Now, I married a man who went down there too much. He was in somebody in here knows about his band that he was in. So he was always over, and he knew about all of those areas. And when he drives by now, he often tells me, you know, so-and-so, you live here, and this is where we used to play. I don't want to talk about that. But anyway, we thank you so much for coming. And we'll do this again. And we may not just have it where you're presenting. We'll just sit around tables and eat and talk about it. But we thank you again. And do remember that there are catalogs back here. And these, you are just the third class in this semester. So we have one person who's been in all three classes and in the fourth and fifth class. I won't call any names. But and she is she tells everybody about our class. She's a major ambassador for us. But we have several more classes. Our classes will go on through May. There will be Underground Railroad. You just look in the little catalog here and tell others about us. We think our thumbprint is going very broad this semester because we sent out a lot of literature to the folk who attended our conference over at Union Chapel. So thank you so very much, and I will send that. Dr. Constance wants to say something.
Bernice and I always sit around saying, so how do we parlay this into something else? I don't think anything has one purpose.
Yeah.
I think you do something, you figure out, well, where else can I play this, use this? And I'm thinking having forums like this to try to create some models to change inner city neighborhoods and homes and communities. And, you know, the tutoring's fine, but if the family, the household unit is not reinforcing, the two of the major felon schools in the city are those beautiful facades, McNair and May Jamison. Two felon schools. I passed by them yesterday, I'm thinking, but I don't care. The food school can be beautiful, but it's that social piece in that community. And I think a lot of us who have had opportunities need to figure this thing out. How do we crack through?
Okay.
How do we crack through?
I'm gonna say this because I'm radical.
Okay.
Following up on what Michael was saying, a lot of this stuff starts at the top. And the people who are in decision-making positions do this stuff to us, and we sit around and do a lot of smiling and amen and Lord's gonna take care of us, all that stuff. But the bottom line is, I think we just need to be, as black people in this community, we need to be more active. That's all I'm gonna say.
And handle and learn how to, we need to create our own models, because they'll come here with a model.
Yeah.
They'll come here with a program that's been sanctioned by the US government as being whatever, no left, child left. They'll come here with something, but I think we have our own unique understanding about how to reach us. And I think those of us, we need to give some more thought to it. We need to figure out how do we break through that mama who doesn't have a dream for her child and say, if you don't have a dream for your child has no direction. I think sometimes if we went to downtown, I promise you the model won't fit.
That's right.
And it won't be effective, and it won't be effective. And so I'm saying that we're sitting up here, when we're sitting in a community, my son was telling me he was at a meeting in Atlanta, and somebody said, oh, not in Atlanta, yeah, in Atlanta. He said, told me it was Huntsville. He said, oh, that's number something city of the highest IQ in the nation. And we contribute, the black people are contributing to that value. How can we not say, with all this intellectual capacity that black people have garnered here, that we're going to not figure out how we create models of transforming our black schools and our black neighborhoods?
Hey, if you might have seen the movie Wrestling that came out about the kids at Johnson, go see that, because when I it's called Wrestling. It's playing at the AMC movie.
Okay.
AMC theater.
Okay. Right now.
It's a short window. I went to see it earlier this week.
Maybe we should sit and have a discussion about it.
Well, that might be one of our special
And
interests.
just Friday.
I mean, it's
to
gonna
trips.
it may have to be a special interest,
Tuesday.
Yeah.
so we can get there while it's
Yeah,
still
but we
there.
really should go see it and see what is it telling
I
us.
seen it after.
Okay, so the last year or the last 2 years that Johnson was over there, one of the teachers came in, he had a wrestling experience at college. So he started a wrestling program at Johnson. And he was there for 2 or 3 years. And the last year, a couple of kids that have been in the program actually won state championships. But the document, it follows them at home. It tells their story.
Okay.
And what it did for me, now I grew up in Huntsville, and what it did for me, it gave me some insight to what's going on in our community. If you see those kids walking down the street, they look just like any other kid in class. But when you went and looked at their house, you talked about some of the things you addressed. So I think it'll be enlightening.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that after it makes the run at the movie, it's going to be shown on PBS, I think, next month or 2 months after.
Okay.
But it's
Still
wrestling.
playing here in Huntsville?
I'll double check, yeah.
How
But
long
it
did
only
it
had like 10 or 12 days.
play?
Oh my
I don't know, I'm gonna look just.
I saw it advertised.
Yeah, we gotta give that in.
Yeah.